So this video is about the DMAIC process, and it's laid out here. You start with define, and then you move to measure, analyze, improve, control. Now, those are the steps. That's where the acronym DMAIC comes from. And it's a process improvement technique that's often used in Six Sigma. Now, one of the things I'm going to ask you about is what is the relationship between DMAIC and Six Sigma? We're going to talk about that a little bit because actually it confuses me a bit. So, but this is a process that's used often in the Six Sigma process. So we first look at define, which is the first step. And you are probably pretty familiar with this. You've done this multiple times in projects in your courses. And I think one of the things that differentiates DMAIC from some of the other processes is that it really does focus on what is a customer needs. And there are some tools that are used for this. One is the project charter, where you actually lay this out and get agreement with the people that you are in contact with regarding the project. And then also just looking at process maps and flowcharts to really kind of understand what are the boundaries of the problem. Another way of looking at this, the book talks about it, another way to look at it is the SIPOC. And what we do here is we start by looking at the suppliers, which is who do I get the stuff from in this particular process that I'm trying to understand. What are the inputs? What needs to go into the process? Is there information? Are there materials, raw materials? What are the processes? What are the steps in this particular process that we're looking at? What are the outputs? What do I get when it's finished? And who are the customers? So this might be a way to really kind of lay out the system you're looking at and looking at really understanding who is involved in this when you're writing the project charter, when you're trying to understand what is the root cause of the problem. So the next step then is to measure. And in measure, what we're doing is we really want to understand what the current state is. Key input variables and key output variables, which key performance input variables and key performance output variables are important to know, sort of measuring something about baseline performance, something about capabilities, maybe something about what initial design aspects were of the process. So measurement is a big focus in DMAIC, trying to get some numbers associated with it. Some of the tools you might use is process capability analysis, cause and effect analysis, statistical process control and process control plans, process map and flowcharts, gauge R&R. These are all methods that you might use in the measurement of the process. So if you remember what we've done, we haven't done any kind of design yet at all. And in fact, even the next step, analyze, doesn't get us to looking at any changes in the system. So this is really a big focus on spending a lot of time at the beginning, understanding what's happening. And in analyze, we want to understand why and how things are as they are. So not just defining what they are, which is what measuring what they are, but actually looking at why are they like that. And there's a bunch of tools. These are just a few of them. You might use regression analysis, again, the focus on data, failure mode and effect analysis, FMEA, hypothesis testing and confidence intervals, design of experiments, SPC, statistical process control and process control plans, and really having a deep understanding of the variability of the system. Now, these are ways that things you might do when you're doing the analyze step. The next step is improve, and this is actually where you start looking at, I'm going to design a change in the system. And you might change small things and then monitor. You might do pilot studies. You might do risk analysis associated with it. But this is where we think of what are we going to change in the system after we've defined, measured, and analyzed. Now we can move to improve. And there's actually a bunch of steps in improve, and they all have to do with designing, value stream mapping, design of experiment, any kind of design. Simulation might be a way to test your improvements. And then the last step in the DMAIC process is control. And that's where you document, monitor, and maintain. And it does feed back into define because often you make one change and then you need to look at what is the next thing you need to change. And a big thing here is statistical process control and then audits to making sure that what you've done is what you said you're going to done. So that's pretty much the whole DMAIC process. We will look at using this process in a project that you might be undertaking in this class.